The alarm that tore through the palace was not one I had ever heard before, and that alone told me something was terribly wrong. My name is Owen, and I had spent 3 years living among the Vortashi as a human liaison to their royal court. I knew every normal sound that palace could make. This was not normal. This sound made my skin crawl before my mind even understood why. I was walking back to my quarters when the frequency hit, a low pulsing wave that seemed to vibrate inside my bones rather than my ears. Doors along the corridor flew open. Guards spilled out of side rooms, and every single one of them was running in the same direction, away from the throne room, their weapons left behind on the floor, as if carrying them had become impossible. I had never seen a Vortashi guard afraid of anything. They were bred for discipline, trained from childhood to face down armed enemies without blinking. Watching 30 of them sprint past me with wide eyes and shaking hands was more frightening than any threat I could imagine, because if they were running, whatever waited ahead had to be something beyond anything they had ever trained for. Then I heard the scream. It was Queen Thecaris. I knew her voice better than almost anyone in that palace, and I had never once heard her sound afraid. She was the calm center of every storm, the one who made jokes during diplomatic crises and stayed unshaken through everything. If she was screaming, the world had tilted onto its side. I did not decide to run toward the throne room. My body simply moved before my thoughts caught up. Every guard I passed was moving the opposite way, and for one strange moment, I wondered if I was the one making the mistake. Then I remembered that she was still in there, alone, and I kept moving. The doors to the throne room had been torn half off their frames. Metal that should have taken heavy machinery to bend was twisted like paper. The lights flickered, throwing shadows that made the wreckage look alive. In the center of the room, backed against the far wall, stood the queen. Her robes were torn at one shoulder, and her breathing was fast and shallow. In front of her was something I still find difficult to describe, because my mind kept sliding away from its shape, refusing to hold a clear picture of it. It was tall, taller than any guard, with limbs that bent in ways that made my stomach turn. It moved with a kind of terrible patience, as if it already knew there was nowhere for her to go. I stood frozen in the doorway for exactly 1 second. Then I saw the guards' weapons scattered across the floor near the entrance, dropped in their panic. I grabbed the nearest one, a long rifle heavier than I expected, and my hands shook so badly I almost dropped it again. I had fired a weapon like this only a few times before, during a short training session, when I first arrived on the planet. I was not skilled. I was not brave in the way stories usually describe bravery. But I understood one simple thing in that moment, that sound and light could distract even the most dangerous creature, and distraction was the only weapon I actually had. I raised the rifle and fired, not aiming at the creature itself, but at the wall just beside it. The sound cracked through the room like thunder, and the creature's head snapped toward me. For the first time since I had entered the room, its attention left the queen. That single second was everything. Thecaris did not wait to see what I would do next. She moved fast, faster than I expected for someone in royal robes, and drove the ceremonial blade at her side into the base of the creature's neck, the one place where its strange armor seemed thin. It let out a sound unlike anything I had heard before, a screech that seemed to shake the walls, and stumbled backward. I fired again, keeping its attention divided between the two of us, hoping that confusion would slow it down. The creature swiped one long limb toward me, and I dropped low just in time, feeling the air move above my head. My shoulder hit the ground hard, but I forced myself back up, refusing to let fear freeze me the way it had frozen 30 trained guards moments before. Thecaris used the opening again, striking a second time, this time at a joint near its leg. The creature's balance broke, and it crashed to the floor with a force that sent dust falling from the ceiling. Even down, it thrashed violently, and for a moment I feared it would rise again, stronger than before. I stepped closer, keeping the rifle aimed, my hands still trembling, but steady enough to hold my ground. The queen stood over the creature, breathing hard, her blade raised for one final strike if needed. Slowly, the thrashing stopped. The room fell into a silence so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I think we were both waiting to see if it would rise again. It did not. Thecaris lowered her blade and turned to look at me, her eyes wide with something between shock and disbelief. Blood, hers or the creature's, I could not tell, stained the edge of her sleeve. She looked at the rifle still shaking in my hands, then at my face, then back at the fallen creature. "You stayed," she said, her voice quiet, almost confused, as if the idea itself was difficult to accept. "Everyone else left," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I did not think about staying. I just could not make myself leave you here alone." She let out a breath that sounded like a laugh, though there was no humor in it, only relief so deep it needed somewhere to go. 30 trained warriors ran from that thing, she said, and you, a man who has fired a weapon perhaps 3 times in his life, did not. "I am not brave," I admitted. "My legs simply forgot how to run." That earned a real laugh from her this time, short and exhausted, but real. She placed a hand on my uninjured shoulder, the weight of it firm and grounding after everything that had just happened. On her planet, that small gesture meant more than words ever could, a sign of trust reserved only for those she considered truly loyal. Guards began to return only minutes later, once the strange alarm frequency finally cut off. They filed in slowly, weapons raised, faces pale, clearly bracing themselves for what they expected to find. Instead, they found their queen alive, standing beside a human who had done what none of them managed to do. The look on their faces was not anger. It was shame, deep and silent, the kind that does not need words to be understood. Some of them lowered their eyes, others stared at the fallen creature, then at me, as if trying to understand how someone so much smaller and so much less trained had managed to stand where they could not. Thecaris did not scold them in front of me. She simply ordered the room secured and asked for the palace healers to look at my shoulder, which I only then realized was bleeding from a graze I had not even noticed during the fight. Adrenaline, I later learned, has a strange way of hiding pain until there is finally time to feel it. In the days that followed, word of what happened spread quickly through the palace, then through the wider city, and eventually across other worlds connected to the Vortashi through trade and diplomacy. People wanted to know how a human, untrained and unarmored, had done something an entire elite guard could not. I did not have a satisfying answer for them. I still do not. Some said it was courage, others said it was loyalty. I think it was something simpler than both of those ideas. I think it was the fact that I could not picture myself walking away while someone I cared about stood alone, facing something terrible. That thought alone was enough to keep my feet moving in the wrong direction, toward danger instead of away from it. Thecaris changed the training for her royal guard soon after. She told me later that she added a new line to their oath, one that had never existed before that night. It simply said that a guard must be willing to stand, even when everything in their body tells them to run, because a guard who runs at the first sign of true danger is no guard at all. She began calling me her small guardian after that, a nickname that stuck no matter how many times I asked her to stop using it in front of visiting officials. I never fully got used to the attention that followed, the whispers in hallways, the strange looks from guards who once outranked me in every visible way, and now treated me with quiet respect instead. What stayed with me most, though, was not the fame, or the nickname, or even the strange creature that still visits my thoughts on quiet nights. It was the simple fact that fear does not always decide what a person does. Sometimes fear is there, loud and overwhelming, and a person moves forward anyway, not because they are fearless, but because staying still feels impossible. I was not a soldier. I was not a hero in the way the old stories describe heroes. I was simply a man who could not leave, and for one terrifying night, that turned out to be exactly what was needed. Even now, when new guards join the palace, some of them ask to hear the story from me directly, as if hearing it from someone who was actually there might explain something the official records cannot capture. I tell it the same way every time, without exaggeration, because the truth alone is strange enough to hold their attention. Sometimes the greatest strength a person can offer is not skill or training, but simply refusing to walk away when someone needs them most. That night taught me that lesson in a way I will never forget, and it is a lesson I hope to carry with me for the rest of my life.